Kyousuke is a pathetic normie stuck with a freaky sister until his life gets flipped upside down when his psychotic sister forces him into her H-world. Now, he's stuck playing sister-loving game while his social life crumbles faster than a dollar store body pillow. But before any of this, Kyousuke wakes up because of his sister's disturbing voice who forces him to take off his clothes as she wants to apply some oil on him. He then starts off his day with breakfast and joins the table with his father and mother. However, his mother couldn't stop flexing his baddie sister's achievements, and then he heads to his school with a nerd friend of his known as Manami. At school, Manami listens to Kyousuke's rants about his sister's overachievement and its effects on his striving to be normal. He is the type that prefers to be normal and indifferent about things. He even sees Manami as the girl with no cheeks. Later, Kyousuke heads off home with Manami, disappointed at how class went as it only reminded him of little sisters which he has bad experiences with. At home, he sees his sister busy talking with someone on the phone and she ignores him completely like a useless freak. After stealing a glass of cold tea from the fridge, he goes to his room upstairs. However, he forgets to return the tea from the fridge and plans on going back to the kitchen. On his way out, Kyousuke accidentally bumps into Kirino, who's getting ready to leave the house with her friends. He tries to help her pick up the things she drops, but Kirino snaps at him instead, rejecting his help and shouting at him. As she walks out, Kyousuke notices something on the floor. It's the DVD cover of Stardust Witch Meru. Just as he's about to look at what's inside, his mother suddenly appears at the front door. Panicking, Kyousuke quickly drops to the floor, trying to hide the strange DVD he found. Afterward, he goes back to his room and wonders who owns the DVD he is holding. Kyousuke has no idea at that time, and when he opens the DVD case, he becomes shocked and more perplexed when he discovers that the DVD case holds an entirely different content. Kyousuke finally manages to sneak a look at the DVD he found, only to discover it's sus. Just as he's processing this, his mother, Yoshino, walks into the room. In a panic, Kyousuke quickly shifts into a fetal position to hide what he's holding. Seeing him in such an odd position makes his mother suspicious, but she eventually leaves the room without saying anything. Once she's gone, Kyousuke makes up his mind. He's determined to find out who owns the strange DVD. Before he can get too far into his thoughts, it's time for dinner. Later, Kyousuke shoves the topic of going to the convenience store and Stardust Witch Meru into the conversation, but his mother reacts calmly and calls it being an otaku. On the other hand, Kirino is starting to become suspicious in his eyes as she finishes her meal and heads off to her room. As Kyousuke heads outside as planned, he notices someone is in his room. He quickly returns, only to find Kirino crouched down, reaching for something under his bed. He's startled at first, and Kirino is about to leave, but when she spots the DVD in Kyousuke's hand, she panics and desperately tries to get it from him. Even though Kirino keeps denying that the DVD is hers, Kyousuke knows it belongs to her, so he decides to hand it over. Kirino then wonders if having a hobby like anime has changed how her brother sees her, but Kyousuke reassures her, saying he's not the type to judge people based on their hobbies. But when Kirino leaves his room, Kyousuke starts to feel sleepy. Just as he's about to doze off, a sharp slap on his face suddenly wakes him up. To his surprise, he finds Kirino lying on top of him and telling him to stay quiet. Turns out, she's actually there to invite him to her room to talk about something. Once there in her room, Kirino admits that she wants to give him an experience she will never forget. She then moves a cabinet which also shows that Kirino's room is decorated in a Japanese style. What really surprises Kyousuke, though, is the sight of the closet. Inside, it's filled with anime merchandise, all neatly organized and arranged. Soon, one of the boxes ends up in Kyousuke's hands, and to his shock, the title on the box reads "Sus Stuff." Kirino, noticing his surprise, quickly starts spilling a lot of information about the box and its contents. Kyousuke is left stunned when Kirino opens another box, revealing even more boxes filled with PC games. She then shows him a different, less mature part of her collection merchandise from Stardust Witch Meru. Kyousuke, feeling more confused than ever, finds himself in a situation he still can't quite understand. However, Kyousuke starts to wonder if the stuff Kirino owns is actually expensive. Kirino then shows him a few items from her collection, and when he sees that some of them cost 41,000 and even 55,000 yen, he's totally shocked at how much they cost. She explains that she works as a model for a magazine and uses the money she earns to buy all of those things. After that, Kirino brings the conversation back to how Kyousuke reacted to her hobby. Kyousuke tells her honestly that he is surprised by it, but he also says again that he doesn't plan on making fun of her or putting her down for it. Afterward, Kyousuke then asks Kirino why she's so into merchandise from the little sister genre. Kirino explains that she just finds it really cute and loves the way little sisters treat their older brothers in different ways. Kyousuke feels a bit confused, wondering why someone like her would even buy stuff that's clearly made for guys. Kirino admits that she doesn't really know the exact reason either, she just somehow started liking little sister games a lot. And over time that liking got stronger and stronger, especially after she started spending more time on the internet. Kirino thinks about telling their parents the truth, but Kyousuke quickly disagrees and says it's better if her secret stays hidden. He also promises to help her keep it, which makes Kirino feel relieved. After that, Kyousuke gets curious about something else related to the little sister games, especially the part where the characters sometimes get into relationships. Hearing this, Kirino gets really uncomfortable and immediately says no to that idea. She explains that the world of 2D and the real world are completely different, so something like that could never happen. After saying that, she tells Kyousuke to leave her room. Back in his room, Kyousuke feels tired and starts to drift off to sleep, until he's suddenly woken up again by another slap to the face. This time, it's Kirino, and she's holding up another game. Nonetheless, she takes him to her room and lets him play the game with her watching. In the game, the protagonist finds his little sister, Saori, sleeping on his bed. A choice appears on the screen, and Kyousuke, trying to play it safe, picks the option kick her out of bed. Without missing a beat, Kirino kicks him in real life, clearly annoyed by his choice. The next day, Kirino is watching a show on her phone that has commando guys with big monsters in it when Kanako sees her and asks what she's doing. But Kanako gets super annoyed when she hears a bunch of otaku loners arguing loudly about some game. After school, Kirino Kousaka finds out that Kyousuke still hasn't finished playing a game that's all about some baddies in love. Kyousuke makes excuses like he had a lot of things to do and he in fact played it all night. However, his dirty little baddie shouts at him in a weird position. She then tells him to bring a laptop to her room and now they will advance past the beginner's level. She gives him a few tips on how to play better and tells him to hurry up, because she's planning to give him even more games from her collection. But Kyousuke starts to wonder if Kirino has any friends she can share all her anime and game knowledge with, and Kirino only gives a vague reply. He then suggests that she try making some otaku friends so she can talk to people who enjoy the same things. After hearing that, Kirino gets uncomfortable and says she doesn't want to be seen as one of them. Even though she really loves anime, manga and games, she's still careful about how it might change the way people see her. She then asks Kyousuke if he has any advice on how to make otaku friends without letting people find out who she really is, but Kyousuke has no idea either because he is friends with people who watches hub stuff. Later on, Kyousuke meets up with Kirino to tell her that it's actually possible to make friends with other otaku loners by using Instagram. But Kirino quickly guesses that the idea must have come from Minami, and when she asks Kyousuke about it, he admits that Minami was the one who suggested it. After that, Kyousuke goes online and helps Kirino make an account using a different name so her real identity stays hidden. Suddenly, Kirino gets a message from a user named Saori, who is the moderator of the Otaku Girls Unite community. In the message, Saori warmly welcomes Kirino and also sends her an invite to the Offyukai, which is a meetup set to take place in Akihabara. When the day finally comes, Kirino pulls Kyousuke along to go with her on the trip. As they walk, she tells him not to get too close because people might think she's dating some smelly guy like him. Kyousuke tells her to just handle everything by herself, but Kirino asks if he's seriously planning to back out now. She reminds him that it's her first time doing anything like this, so he's coming along no matter what. Even then, Kyousuke tries to explain that he can't come because it's a girl-only group. So instead, Kyousuke chooses to help from the side as he will go inside and sit there where she will be. He heads to the meeting spot to make sure she's okay but is totally shocked when he finds out it's a maid cafe. He sits down and looks through the menu only to realize that he is a brokey. Afterward, a short baddie arrives and asks him what he would like to be addressed as. Kyousuke feels surprised when the maid suddenly starts calling him Oni-chan, and even though it makes him really uncomfortable, he decides to just deal with it and gives his order. Soon after, a group of girls walk into the cafe, and among them is Kirino, one girl dressed like a goth baddie, and another who's super tall and wearing glasses. The tall girl steps forward and tells the maid that they have a 1-hour reservation under the name Saori. The moment Kyousuke hears the name Saori along with Bajina, he almost chokes on his glass of water. Since Saori has the same name as the moderator who sent Kirino that welcome message online, and Bagina sounds so strange that it seems like it's from some expired cat foods brand name. Soon, the offukai begins with Saori standing up and introducing herself before letting everyone join in on an open discussion. Watching from a distance, Kyousuke can tell that Kirino is having a hard time fitting in, since she doesn't seem to blend well with the other otaku girls. While keeping an eye on her, he eats the rice omelet he ordered earlier. After an hour passes, Saori wraps up the offukai with a short gift exchange. Once it ends, everyone begins to leave the restaurant. Kirino looks kind of down and Kyousuke gently pats her on the head to cheer her up. She lets out some frustration at him, and Kyousuke, trying to lighten the mood, suggests they go do some sightseeing around Akihabara for a while. As they head outside, Saori walks up to them and she clears up her confusion about Kirino and Kyousuke seeming like a couple, and once that's out of the way, she invites them to an after-party at a nearby fast food place. When they get there, they find the goth-dressed girl from earlier, Kirino, already waiting. The after-party begins and the seemingly quiet Kirino voices her opinions towards Saori, joined by Kirino. Kyousuke is shocked by their personality and asks Kirino and Kirino to apologize, but Saori assures him that she is not affected by the taunts they threw. Soon, Kirino criticizes Kirino's outfit, bluntly saying it looks like something worn by women who hang out on the streets and that it's completely inappropriate for an offukai. Kirino, clearly offended, fires back by mocking Kirino's gothic look, saying she looks like she's trying too hard to cosplay Suijin. Kirino doesn't flinch, she doubles down, declaring that her fashion sense, her anime preferences, and even her worldview are far superior to Kirino's. Kyousuke tries to step in again, attempting to act like a referee to settle the argument, but only makes it worse when he casually mentions that anime is just an anime. Immediately, both girls give him fierce glares and he decides to quietly return to his seat, realizing he made the situation worse. Saori, who's sitting nearby, watches the scene with a smile, thinking that their argument actually shows they're starting to get along. However, the two girls continue hurling insults at each other, completely ignoring everything around them. Meanwhile, Kyousuke becomes aware of the growing attention they're attracting from others, as the noise from the argument is clearly getting louder. Eventually, they all agree it's best to leave the place and find somewhere else to go, hoping the chaos will die down. Inside Comic Torinona, a shop that specializes in doujin, or fan works, Kirino points out that Stardust Witch Meru is a popular choice for lustful-minded doujin fans. Kirino quickly tries to defend herself, saying that Mashura doujins are all about femboys. After visiting more shops and checking out anime merchandise, Saori and Kirino say their goodbyes at the train station. Soon after, the siblings head home, and the topic of their trip becomes the main conversation. The two siblings start to talk about the day's events. The night goes smoothly for the two siblings, except for Kyousuke, who is still hooked on playing games. Kirino, on the other hand, is studying in her room. Soon, Kyousuke finally finishes Shiori's story and celebrates, but his excitement quickly fades as he realizes he's getting pulled deeper into the world of games because of his sister. Later that night, Kyousuke goes to return the game to Kirino, after having to explain the best parts of the game. The conversation then shifts to the offukai, and Kirino mentions that she now has Kirino and Saori in her contacts, and they're already talking about the next one. She doesn't admit to making any friends, but Kyousuke can tell the offukai was at least somewhat successful. The next day, Kirino spends her afternoon at a photo shoot with her classmate and fellow model, Ayase. During their break, Ayase uses the chance to ask Kirino if she wants to hang out with her on Sunday. But Kirino already has something else in mind, though it's something a bit strange and secret, so she turns down Ayase's offer without giving much detail. Ayase starts to get a little suspicious after that and wonders if Kirino might be meeting up with someone special instead. At home, Kirino talks on the phone with Kirino while playing one of her little sister games. It turns out Kirino had begged her to watch Mashura, and now they're chatting about Kirino's thoughts on the series. As they talk, Kirino starts to notice that Kirino keeps pausing a lot during the call, and she quickly guesses that Kirino is probably playing a game while talking. Kirino doesn't even try to deny it, and instead, she switches the subject and asks Kirino how she felt about watching Meru. But Kirino, being as stubborn as ever, says she still has no interest and doesn't want to watch it at all. Meanwhile, Kyousuke is having fun on the phone with Manami, and the two of them chat about Kirino's life counseling and a few other things. On Sunday, Kirino makes plans to have Kirino come over and watch her full-made cafe's Bad Is collection with her. At the same time, Kyousuke is getting ready to go out and meet up with Manami. On the other hand, Kirino asks Kiriko if she has a DVD player, but she don't, so Kirino decides to bring hers. The next day, at Akihabara, Kirino goes with Saori and Kiriko, and Saori reaches out her support while Kirino is excited for a newly released game title. Kyousuke, on the other hand, is spending some time with Manami. It appears that Manami is trying to make a move by offering her lap for a sleepy Kyousuke to rest on. But he is such a brain-dead loner that he didn't notice anything. After Kirino buys a copy of OreImo Fes, Saori takes both of them to a restaurant. Kiriko still doesn't like watching Kirino cling so tightly to her brand new merch, clearly excited about it. But Saori tries to ease the mood by pointing out that it's not a big deal. After all, she herself picked up some doujinshi earlier that day too. Just like she promised, Kirino then hands over her Stardust Witch Maru DVDs to Kiriko so she can finally watch them. Soon, Kiriko starts wondering why they had to go all the way back to Akiba instead of picking a place that was closer. Kirino quickly reacts and shudders at the thought. She's clearly trying to keep her hobby a secret from people she knows. But Kiriko admits that she doesn't feel the same way. She says her parents already have some idea about her hobby, and honestly, she doesn't really care if they know or not. Meanwhile, Kyousuke finally gets a message from Kirino on his phone and he feels relieved knowing that she's doing fine. Later on, when Kyousuke gets home and walks into the living room, he's shocked to see his dad sitting there with Kirino, and an open DVD case lying on the table. His mom quickly explains what happened, which is that when Kirino got back she dropped the DVD when she bumped into dad. Kyousuke quietly admits to his mom that he already knows what the DVD is about. After hearing that, his mom starts to question why Kirino would even have something like that in the first place. Before they can say anything else, their conversation comes to a sudden stop when Kirino storms out of the house without a word. At his mother's request, Kyousuke hurries after her. He follows her all the way to an arcade, where he finally finds her furiously playing a rhythm game, using it as a way to let out all the anger and frustration she's feeling. In a restaurant, Kyousuke confronts Kirino with what happened inside the living room. Kirino tells him that she heard her father refers to her hobby as useless and that she should just focus on cooking instead. She's furious and completely helpless because of everything that happened, hitting the game controls with all her strength. Seeing this, Kyousuke gently reminds her what being an otaku could bring: trouble, judgment, and misunderstandings, and says maybe things would go more smoothly if she stopped throwing herself so deeply into her hobby. But Kirino doesn't back down. She firmly says that she's already decided. She'll never feel whole if she gives up the part of herself that loves anime and games. That part of her is too important to just erase. Hearing this, Kyousuke finally admits that he was testing her. He wanted to see how serious she was. Then he looks at her and tells her that because of her answer, he's going to do something for her. That night, after letting his mom know that Kirino's okay, Kyousuke finally sits down to talk with their dad. He asks him to let Kirino keep all her stuff, and he explains that she already knows her hobby is strange, but it's something that gave her real friends and a place where she could be herself. With their mom's support, Kyousuke tries to back up his words by showing the awards Kirino has won and even pulling out their dad's old photo album, which is full of Kirino's pictures from her magazine shoots. It looks like their dad is starting to understand and maybe even accept Kirino's hobby. But there's still one thing he can't overlook. Some of the games in her collection are adult hentai, and that's where he draws the line. At first, Kyousuke feels stuck, and deep down, he knows his dad has a point, but then he remembers the promise he made to Kirino. He realizes he can't just defend who she is. If he truly meant what he said, he has to stand up for all of it, no matter how hard it is. Kyousuke then looks his father in the eye and admits that it's actually his collection, not Kirino's. His father's anger flares up instantly as he realizes that means Kyousuke had been in his sister's room and was planning to show her those kinds of things. Without warning, his father punches him hard, furious at the idea that Kyousuke would do something like that. The next day, Manami gets to see Kyousuke's face first and congratulates him for having survived what happened last night. After school, Kyousuke sees Kirino talking on the phone with someone else. He walks into the kitchen to grab a drink, and as he stands there, he admits to himself that his life will never be the same after everything that's happened. Just as he's about to head to his room, Kirino calls him over. She thanked him for what he did for her the day before, and Kyousuke, a little surprised, quietly acknowledging her gratitude. The next day, Kyousuke spends his time playing another of Kirino's game, and it is some kind of fighting game. Later, Kirino says that he can't stay in his room all morning during weekend playing games. Although Kirino knows how to play the game, she decides to refer Kyousuke to various websites that offer detailed information about it, calling it Siscalypse. Before leaving, she reminds him not to leave his room tomorrow while she's having some friends over for a visit. Once Kirino is gone, Kyousuke heads back to his room and decides to use her laptop to do some research on the game. After spending some time looking up information, he figures he'll give Siscalypse another tries. However, when he sees how far Kirino has progressed in the game, he feels defeated and ends up giving up on it. Soon, a message from Saori pops up on Kirino's laptop. Kyousuke decides to reply, and as he reads the message, he discovers that Saori is the one responsible for Kirino's recent losing streak in the game and the mood swings that have come with it. Seeing an opportunity to get back at Kirino for forcing him to play Siscalypse, Kyousuke decides to take advantage of the situation. He asks Saori for help with something and without hesitation, she agrees to assist him. The next day, Ayase and Kanako arrive at Kirino's house to hang out with her. After welcoming them in, Kirino quickly ushers her guests upstairs and then turns to scold Kyousuke for letting himself be seen by them. Not wanting to argue, Kyousuke quietly retreats to his room and starts up Siscalypse again. As he sits there, controller in hand, he wonders what even pushed him to start playing in the first place. With a sigh, he eventually gives up and flops onto his bed, while upstairs, Kirino and her friends chat and enjoy their time together. However, Kyousuke soon realizes that the walls in the house are thinner than he thought. He can clearly hear Kirino and her friends talking from his room. He tries to distract himself, maybe with a game or his phone, but nothing works. His curiosity gets the better of him. Things get worse when Ayase suddenly brings him up in the conversation. Kyousuke's ears perk up, and he listens in closer, as he hears Kirino making cold, almost cruel comments about him, followed by the shocked reactions from Ayase and Kanako. He feels a mix of irritation and hurt. Finally, unable to take any more, he gets up and decides to leave his room. Afterwards, Kyousuke gets a package from someone named Saori Makishima. Right after that, he sees Kirino coming down the stairs and gets surprised when he realizes he's holding a box full of makeup.
What?
Kirino looks at it and says it's so expensive that even she can't buy it. Then she quickly grabs it out of his hands. While he's still confused, Kyousuke gets a phone call from Saori. They talk about the box and Saori tells him that it's actually filled with doujinshi from Siscalypse and Meru, not makeup like they thought. However, Kyousuke is shocked when he hears this, and he runs straight to Kirino's room. When he gets there, he sees her guests holding the box, so he tries to take it back. That starts a crazy chase between him and Kirino. They run all over the place until Kyousuke tackles her, but then he falls over her and even sees the color of her plot. Ayase and other nerd baddie arrives and wonder if they have that kind of relationship. Afterward, Kirino tells Kyousuke to stay outside, and the whole thing ends up hurting his reputation. While Kyousuke thinks about going back in, he suddenly gets a call from Ayase. She seems to understand why he tried to keep the box's contents a secret and even says sorry for how Kirino acted. Ayase also takes a moment to introduce herself properly, and before she leaves, they exchange contact info. Later, inside Kirino's room, Kyousuke finally gets a chance to tell her off for everything that happened earlier. But instead of listening, Kirino keeps blaming Kyousuke, saying it's his fault for becoming friends with Saori behind her back. Then, out of nowhere, Kirino tells him she wants to take him somewhere else, to a place where not even Ayase can come with them. The next day, they head out into what feels like some kind of burning inferno. With help from Saori, Kirino and Kyousuke go to their very first comic circle market, joining her and Kirino. They end up waiting for hours under the hot summer sun, and even Kyousuke and Kirino start getting tired and annoyed from all the standing around. After what feels like forever, they finally make it into the event. Both Kyousuke and Kirino are shocked when they see how many people are packed inside. It looks like a giant sea of people stretching from outside all the way in. That's when Kirino casually says she already went yesterday, and Saori tells them this is her third day in a row joining the event. They soon make their way into the hall where tons of doujinshi are being sold. Saori asks Kirino about which artists she likes the most, and it turns out most of them are people Saori already knows about. So, she decides to take Kirino, Kyousuke, and Kirino along with her to check them out. While they're walking outside, Kyousuke looks around and stares at cosplayers like a freak, and he wonders out loud how they can handle the heat while wearing such heavy costumes. Later, they head over to the industry booths where all the merchandise is being sold. Kirino excitedly runs straight
Oh my god,
to the Alice's booth, which is the booth for the makers of the Siscalypse game. But when they arrive, they find out that all the exclusive comic copies of Siscalypse are already sold out. Just when things seem hopeless, they find out there's still a way to get a copy. The booth holds a special contest where people can win prizes, including the limited event CD, if they manage to beat one of the staff members. The twist is that this staff member has already beaten 50 challengers in the past 3 days. Kirino quickly decides to take on the challenge, but she ends up getting defeated almost right away. However, Kirino actually manages to beat the staff member. Even though she wins, she chooses to give the prize to Kirino instead. The way the two of them talk afterward makes both Kyousuke and Saori smile, since they understand how these two always act around each other. With that, the day at summer comic comes to an end for Kirino and the rest of the group. Kirino looks super happy as she shows off all the stuff she gets to take home, her arms full of new merch. While walking out, Saori chats with Kyousuke about why she wanted to bring them all to the event in the first place. Then, out of nowhere, something unexpected happens. Ayase shows up and spots Kirino standing right outside the venue. Afterward, they both get shocked to see each other and Saori asks Kyousuke who she is, so he tells her that she is Kirino's friend. Ayase reminds Kirino that she's supposed to be busy with club activities, which makes the situation even more awkward. Kirino turns to Kyousuke, shooting him an angry look, like she's silently begging him to do something. Realizing she's in trouble, Kyousuke steps in and decides to cover for her. As it turns out, Ayase assumes that the two are dating, which Kirino tries to deny, only to be stopped by Kyousuke. He then asks her where she is going, so she tells him that they are doing a photo shoot. Ayase soon notices that Kirino is unusually quiet and tries to offer a friendly gesture by offering them a ride home. Kirino turns down the offer and tells her that she is fine. Ayase also notices Kirino and Saori behind them, who decide to leave upon judging the situation. However, Ayase looks confused and asks what the occasion is. Kirino tries to act like she doesn't know, but she starts blurting things out without meaning to. It's clear she's terrible at lying. Kyousuke quickly notices this and tries to help her out, hoping to steer the conversation away. But before he can say much, Ayase grabs Kirino's hand, stopping her from slipping away. At that moment, Ayase's face changes completely, showing just how upset she is. She accuses Kirino of lying and hiding something from her, demanding the truth. As the rain starts pouring harder over Tokyo, the tension between them rises. Ayase points to the bag Kirino is carrying and asks what's inside. Instead of answering, Kirino turns and runs, but Ayase quickly grabs the bag and pulls hard, ripping it open. The contents fall out and get soaked in the rain, doujin that Kirino had just bought. Ayase picks one up, looks at it and then says that she can't be friends with Kirino anymore. After saying that, she walks away, leaving Kirino behind. Later that day, Kyousuke gives Saori a call to thank her for all the help, but she shifts the topic and asks how Kirino is doing. The next day, Kirino leaves for training camp and Kyousuke stays home, playing Siscalypse. Even though he's been losing over and over, he keeps trying and the game ends up reminding him of Kirino, who's out there training for track and field. Eventually, after a long struggle, Kyousuke finally beats the tough opponent that's been giving him trouble. The next day, Kyousuke decides to ask Kirino if something happened at school, wondering if Ayase ended up exposing her secret. But Kirino quickly shuts him down, insisting that Ayase would never do something like that. She clearly doesn't want to talk about it and tries to end the conversation right there. Still, Kyousuke doesn't give up even when Kirino keeps rejecting his concern. He stands his ground, showing just how stubborn he can be when it comes to helping her. He tells her that he wants her and Ayase to make up after what happened during the summer, and he makes it clear that he's not going to leave her alone until she finally opens up and tells him everything. Kirino finally opens up and admits that she hasn't done anything to fix her friendship with Ayase, not because she doesn't care, but because training camp has been overwhelming. Hearing that, Kyousuke scolds her, saying that using training as an excuse isn't good enough when it comes to something this important. She lashes out, kicking him in the groin and landing a few extra hits for good measure. Then, in true Kirino fashion, she turns the tables and tells Kyousuke that the life consultation session they started isn't over yet. If he's going to stick his nose into her business, then he has to see it through to the very end and take responsibility for all of it. That afternoon, Kyousuke tries to call Ayase, hoping she will talk to him, but he finds out that it's not Kirino who doesn't want to talk, it's Ayase herself. She is upset and blames Kyousuke for everything that's going on, even though Kyousuke wants a chance to explain his side first. But before he can say anything, Ayase says she wants to tell her part of the story. She talks about what happened between her and Kirino at school. She had asked Kirino to stop her hobby completely, but when Kirino strongly said no, Ayase felt hurt. She thinks Kirino cares more about the hobby than about being her friend. Later, Ayase explains that she started to see the bad side of having anime and games as a hobby. She says the news and media in Japan often link people who enjoy those things to real-life crimes. After the call ends, Kyousuke starts to understand just how worried Ayase is about Kirino. He knows her fear isn't something that can be easily dismissed, especially with so many news articles connecting games to crimes. So, Kyousuke makes a choice. He goes to talk to his dad about a plan he has in mind. On another day, Kyousuke meets with Ayase again and brings up the case about the Siscalypse fan. He tells her that the man who attacked the girl wasn't actually connected to Siscalypse at all. The attacker was a lollican, not an otaku, and the news had gotten it wrong. With help from his father, Kyousuke is able to gather real proof and puts everything into a small folder. He hands it to Ayase. It includes details the news left out, and even a letter of apology written by the journalist who first reported the story. However, Ayase decides to take back what she said before about otakus losing their humanity, but she still doesn't change her mind about Kirino's hobby. Kyousuke tries to make her see things differently. He tells her that Kirino hasn't changed at all. She's still the same person, even with her hobby. But Ayase doesn't believe it as she says the Kirino she's seeing now feels fake. Then, Kirino suddenly shows up and walks toward Ayase. She asks her to decide which version of her is the fake one. The girl who seems perfect in every way or the one who honestly enjoys anime, manga and games. Ayase picks the perfect one as the real Kirino, but Kirino tells her she's wrong. She says she truly loves her hobby and no matter what, it will never change how she treats the people she cares about. Even after everything, Ayase still strongly hates indecent manga and the whole situation leaves her so confused that she starts crying. Kirino, not knowing what else to do, asks Kyousuke for help again. Kyousuke comes up with a bold idea and pretends that he's in love with his little sister. Hearing that, Ayase snaps. She stands up, shows her scary side again, and threatens Kyousuke, warning him not to ever lay a hand on Kirino. A few minutes later, Kyousuke gets a message from Ayase. She says she knew the whole time that he was faking it, but she still warns him if he ever touches Kirino in a weird way, she will beat him to death. Because of that moment, Ayase starts seeing Kyousuke in a worse light, but at the same time, she becomes close friends with Kirino again, telling herself it's her job to protect Kirino from her freaky brother. That night, when Kyousuke gets home, he sees Kirino smiling and happily talking to Ayase on the phone. The next day, Manami shares her idea of celebrating Halloween by holding a small fair where they'll give out Western-style sweets. She talks about her plan with Kyousuke and tells him that she wants him to be the first one to try the treats she made before the fair starts. Since it's Manami asking and she's his best friend, Kyousuke doesn't even think about saying no. At school, one of Kyousuke's classmates gets curious and asks him directly about his relationship with Manami. Without hesitating, Kyousuke flat out says no because Manami is flat, and he likes baddies with extra uniforms. Afterward, Kirino gets home from school and sees that her package has arrived. It's the Diddy oil she ordered online, but her mom notices it and asks why she bought it. She then quickly says it must be something she uses to feel better or stay comfortable. Luckily, her mom doesn't ask anything else, so Kirino takes the Diddy oil to her room without any trouble. At the same time, Kyousuke goes with Manami to her family's store. He isn't too sure if the fair will really bring in many customers, but Manami feels sure that the events they planned will help the store get more sales. Manami then invites Kyousuke into her family's house. When they go into one of the rooms, they find her grandfather lying at a table as if someone forced him to watch Andrew Tate. However, Kyousuke starts to panic and tells Manami to call an ambulance. He thinks the old man might be dead and tries to help, feeling nervous. But soon, Manami's grandmother comes into the room and calmly tells Kyousuke that her husband is actually okay. As part of his prank, Manami's grandfather hides inside the refrigerator to make his body cold, uses curry to copy the smell of a dead body, and takes advantage of his weak pulse to make the trick more believable. When Manami's grandmother finds out, she gets so mad that her angry words are enough to make him stop the prank right away. Manami feels super relieved that her grandfather is still alive, but Kyousuke is really angry. For For a moment, he even thinks about beating him up like how John Cena once beat The Rock in a wrestling match. But instead of doing that, he just shouts at him, saying the prank felt way too real and could have seriously scared some kids. However, Manami and her grandmother decide it's a good time to bring out the sweets they made for Kyousuke to try. While they're getting things ready, Manami's little brother, Iwao, walks into the room with a new haircut. He thinks it's a skinhead style, but it turns out he looks more like a beaten-up main character from an isekai anime. His grandfather bursts into laughter and Iwao turns red from embarrassment, shouts that people over 50 can't be trusted and storms off to his room. A little later, Manami comes back holding a plate full of sweets she made herself. She looks a bit nervous and shy as she asks Kyousuke to try them and tell her what he thinks. Kyousuke takes a bite and is surprised by how good they taste. He tells Manami they're delicious, and she blushes deeply, clearly happy with his praise. Just then, her grandfather suddenly whispers from under the table, saying they should stop wasting time and just get married already. Kyousuke gets so surprised by the comment that he ends up choking on the tea he was drinking. What makes it even more shocking is that Manami's grandmother nods and says she agrees with the idea. Manami's face turns bright red from all the teasing, and without saying much, she grabs Kyousuke by the arm and quickly drags him upstairs into her room, trying to escape the awkward moment. Kyousuke soon arrives at Manami's room, but she asks him to wait outside for a moment while she gets things ready. As he stands there alone, he suddenly feels some puberty things, and it turns out he's thinking about his sister, who at that very moment is happily hugging the Stardust Witch body pillow she recently ordered. After a little while, Manami finishes setting up and finally invites Kyousuke inside her room. At first, neither of them says much. Manami understands how tired he must be, so she lets him do what he wants and quietly begins preparing some tea for both of them. Soon, Kyousuke brings up the topic of getting ready for the event at Manami's family store. Manami says she'll help out as soon as the store closes for the day, and Kyousuke agrees to lend a hand too. To thank him, Manami offers to make him dinner at his place after they finish their work. She also tells Kyousuke that her dad and grandparents are really happy to see him again after so long and would love to talk with him. Kyousuke realizes he doesn't really have a way out of it, so with a tired sigh, he tells Manami that he'll just stay over for the night. As they climb the stairs together, Manami tells herself that Kyousuke must have been skipping his usual visits to the Tamura home lately and guesses, perhaps jokingly, that he's discovered bigger, juicier burgers somewhere else. Kyousuke, however, gently clears up her assumption by explaining that he actually prefers sleeping over at the Tamura residence because it feels cozier and more comfortable than his own house. Back at home, Kirino finally realizes that Kyousuke probably won't be coming back that night, and overhears their parents trying to make a sister for Kirino. Later that evening, Manami suddenly brings up the idea of taking a bath together, which completely shocks Kyousuke. He stares at her in disbelief, unsure if she's serious or just joking. Instead of getting flustered, he says sure like he's actually going to go along with it. Manami panics right away and quickly calls out to her grandparents for help. After Kyousuke manages to take a bath, Manami takes Kyousuke to another room near her bedroom. As he and Manami return to their rooms, Kyousuke discovers that there are actually two futons the room where he would sleep in. Manami later finds out that her futon is missing, and it was all her grandfather's plan to make them sleep together. Her grandfather is even more freaky than Drake. That night, Kyousuke and Manami start thinking about the old days they spent together. After a while, Kyousuke says they should get some sleep. Just before they settle in, Manami tells Kyousuke that she wants to go to the same university he chooses. She adds that even when they get to college, nothing between them will change and they'll still be together like always. Afterward, Kyousuke arrives home and it turns out that there is no one inside. But when he opens the lights, he finds Kirino is sitting on a lounge chair. Later, she says why she goes to Kyousuke's house. Kirino finds out that she has only seen 6 episodes of Stardust Witch Meru and Kirino is clearly upset about it. To help calm things down between Kirino and Kirino, since they like different shows, Saori comes up with an idea. She suggests they have a special anime night where they watch both Mashura and Meru, and each of them gives their own thoughts while watching the other's favorite show. That way, they both get to share what they like in a fun and fair way. Kirino then agrees to the plan, since she knows her parents aren't home on Thursdays. But suddenly, something important comes up for Saori, and she has to cancel. Because of that, only Kyousuke, Kirino, and Kirino will be taking part in the anime night. After making a quick snack for Kirino, Kyousuke decides to ask about the fight between his naughty sister and the baddie. However, Kirino explains that a certain novel had something to do with their last argument and says it was really bad. She also says the main character is just like the author, almost like a mirror, and that most of the novel is written in short. Afterward, Kyousuke then decides to leave Kirino for the moment to carry this school stuff to his room. He checks up on Kirino and discovers that she is busy playing game alone. Kyousuke is shocked to find out that she has the time to play games while having a visitor. Kirino puts the blame on Kirino, but when Kyousuke talks about what her novel contained, she was stopped. However, Kirino then brings out a copy of a Mashura Doujin manga novel that Kirino wrote. She says she wants to kill her because of how the story turned out and starts telling her brother all about it. According to Kirino, after Shikoku, the main character of Mashura, defeats the final enemy called the Queen of Nightmare, she somehow goes back in time and takes the place of a girl who was supposed to be dead. Afterward, Kyousuke brings Kirino down to the living room to sit with Kirino and tells them that for now, they should just focus on watching the show. A little later, Kyousuke gets a phone call from Saori and he updates her on what's happening. Saori then says that the screening should start soon and that she'll be watching along from her own home. As soon as the first episode starts, Kirino becomes super excited, while Kirino begins to quietly point out problems with Kirino's favorite anime. During the whole broadcast, Kirino stays mostly silent. Kyousuke looks like he's in pain and Kirino watches with full excitement. Later, Kirino begins criticizing Maru for its content which, to her, mixes the concept of eroge and loli. However, Kirino defends Maru for saying that the theme for the series is friendship, which Kirino instantly questions. The next day, Kyousuke is welcomed by a shocking remark by Kirino that Kyousuke is browsing disgusting sites on her laptop. Kyousuke clearly did not dismiss her claim and apologize, although he still got called a freaky hunter for that. Kirino then declares that he must do something to make up. It turns out the real reason for the visit is something she calls life counseling. But really, Kirino just wants someone to check out her newest work. She says she's improved her writing style compared to her last story. This time, she even submitted it to the website of Reijiki Bunko, a book publisher. Kirino feels like she has what it takes to write a good novel, so she's already planning to write another one. She then tells her brother about the plot of Little Sister City. The story takes place in a ruined Tokyo after the end of the world, where the main character saves girls and helps bring the world back to life. Kirino then suddenly asks Kyousuke to get hit by a speeding car so she can understand how the main character feels. Of course, Kyousuke refuses right away, and Kirino decides she'll just use pictures instead. Afterward, Kirino drags her ugly brother into some shopping, while still making progress in research. Kirino then asks Kyousuke to buy her a ring that costs 30,000 yen. But Kyousuke admits that he does not have the money for the purchase, so she decides to go to a store with much cheaper accessories. Then, Kirino and Kyousuke leave the shop with a pair of heart-shaped earrings. Kyousuke's irritation for being forced into the whole thing begins to show, and before long, he ends up criticizing Kirino's work. Then, Kyousuke discovers that Kirino is not walking beside him, and instead, he finds her drenched, reenacting a scene from the novel that she plans to write. Although overcome by shock, Kyousuke decides to cover her soaked clothes with his jacket and takes her to a hotel. After they leave the hotel, Kirino suddenly comes up with an idea while they walk along the bright, well-lit roadside. As she walks a little ahead of him, Kyousuke notices that snow has started to fall. While following behind her, he can't help but think about how strange and chaotic his Christmas Eve has turned out to be. The next day, Kirino finds out that the novel she wrote, called Imautoshi, is a big hit. It turns out that guests really like it and she's been getting lots of fan mail and emails from people who read it. She meets with one of the staff members from the company, who shares the exciting news with her. But there's even more. Kirino is shocked to hear that her novel might actually be turned into an anime series. While hanging out at a mecha-themed restaurant, Kirino excitedly tells Saori and Kirino the big news about her novel possibly becoming an anime. But when Kirino hears it, she doesn't look happy. Instead, she makes some rude comments about Kirino and her work. The mood gets tense, but Saori quickly steps in and stops the fight from getting worse. After things calm down, Kirino brings up the real reason she asked them to meet. She wants to start planning ideas for which anime studio, staff, and voice actors would be the best match for turning her novel into a show. But to her surprise, both Saori and Kirino don't seem that interested in helping. Soon, Saori and Kirino find out that Kirino is really nervous about working on an anime for the first time. She admits she needs their help and doesn't want to do it alone. Even though Kirino didn't want to join at first, she changes her mind when she hears the name of the person who met with Kirino. Curious and still a little unsure, she agrees to help. Just like they promised, Saori and Kirino go with Kirino to the office of Mediaski, where the planning meeting for the anime will take place. As they enter the room, both Kirino and Kirino feel nervous and excited at the same time. They are greeted by 4 serious-looking staff members, and the pressure makes their stomachs twist. The meeting starts with Kirino, Kirino, and Saori introducing themselves. Kirino is surprised when Kirino calls her and Saori her assistants for the project. It takes a small interruption from Saori before the meeting finally moves forward. However, Kirino quickly gets to work, pulling out a big stack of notes she prepared earlier full of ideas she's been thinking about. Her excitement and eagerness catch the staff off guard and they seem a little stunned by her energy. When Kirino finishes presenting everything she had planned, the production staff look at each other and start suggesting their own ideas, which are very different from hers. Instead of adapting the entire novel like Kirino wanted, the production team decides to focus on the first volume only, turning it into a 13-episode anime series. They also plan to add some original episodes to help expand the story. The team shares that they will release the series in the middle of spring, which means they won't be able to include multiple opening and ending themes like Kirino hoped. As the brainstorming session continues, Kirino's ideas for her novel are changed one by one. That afternoon, Kirino returns home, completely drained, and she goes straight to her room, but as usual, she makes a loud noise outside Kyousuke's door. When he opens the door, he sees Kirino with a glassy look in her eyes. Before he can say anything, she suddenly faints in front of him. The next day, Kyousuke arranges a meeting with Saori and Kirino to ask them what happened to Kirino. He also tells them that his sister hasn't left her bed since the previous day. Kirino answers bluntly, saying that Kirino's reaction is actually normal, especially for someone whose work has been changed so much. Saori adds that creating written works like novels or manga is very different from making an anime series, and the process can be tough for someone who is used to complete control over their story. Then, Saori reveals something she recently found out. The production of the anime based on Kirino's novel just so happens to be taking place at the same time another anime series was unexpectedly cancelled. With Saori and Kirino by his side, Kyousuke heads to meet with Iori Fate Setsuna to talk things over. Iori agrees to meet with Kyousuke, and Kyousuke takes the chance to ask the production team to speak with him about the changes being made to Kirino's novel adaptation. When the meeting begins, Saori, Kirino, and Kyousuke are handed a summary of the changes planned for the novel and the anime adaptation. As the discussion moves forward, the team debates how to deal with the author's demand that the main character must remain female. Meanwhile, Kyousuke starts to feel left out and ignored by the production team. The production team appears to have made their final decision, so Kyousuke tries to question their move to make a spin-off. The producer continues on his harsh criticism of Kirino's work, calling it as unfit to be adapted into an anime series. Kyousuke feels completely out of ideas on how to defend his sister's work, but just when he's about to give up, an unexpected person steps in to help Kirino. She speaks up and Kyousuke realizes she's right about him. She points out how he's always willing to do anything for Kirino, who is used to being in the spotlight. Kyousuke finally mustered his courage to talk again. He talks as Kirino's brother, and requests them to allow Kirino to be happy by making the anime based on her novel. He does not want his sister to die of depression, nor see her heartbroken. With this, he pleads to them with his head bowed low, asking them once again to reconsider looking into Kirino's novel. With the fate of the anime series now in the hands of the production team, Kyousuke, Saori, and Kirino head back home. On the way, Kyousuke asks the two of them to keep everything that happened a secret from Kirino. Kirino, however, had already made up her mind not to say anything to Kirino, even before Kyousuke made his request. However, Saori reminds them that the anime project is still uncertain, and she hopes that what they've done so far will be enough to make the production team reconsider the changes they want to make to Kirino's novel. The next day, Kirino finally gets the summary of the anime series adaptation of her novel. She's happy to see that many of her ideas have made it into the project, feeling like her hard work has paid off. The usual silly moments between the Kousaka siblings keep going, with Kyousuke coming back from a quick trip to the store and Kirino snapping at him, upset that he isn't the person she was waiting for.
What?
Kyousuke starts to wonder what's going on with his sister, since after their last life counseling session, she hasn't really talked to him much. What's even stranger is that she seems really restless lately. Kirino finally tells him what she's been waiting for, and it's no surprise to Kyousuke. It's a game called Sis X Sis. As soon as her package arrives, Kirino hurries into her room with her brand new game. But she quickly finds out that the game needs a computer with high system requirements. Meanwhile, Kirino spends the rest of her day at home. It's shown that she lives a simple life with her younger sisters and her mom, and instead of her usual gothic outfit, she wears a tracksuit while staying inside. At the same time, Kyousuke stays in his room and sends a message to Manami, asking if she wants to go out for a walk, but she replies that she's too busy. Luckily, his sister is still completely focused on her brand new game, giving him some peace and quiet. Later, Kirino gets a phone call and remembers that her modeling job is the reason she can't keep playing the game. That morning, Ayase is busy with her own work as a fashion model. After doing several photo shoots with the photographer, she and the other models head off in different directions. Ayase starts to wonder what Kirino is doing, but when she tries calling her, she finds out that Kirino's phone isn't reachable. Meanwhile, Kirino is busy playing through Rinko's story and starts to enjoy the character's tsundere attitude at first. But after a while, her amusement turns into frustration as Rinko's stubbornness becomes too much for her. Kyousuke, sitting in his room, starts to hear his sister complaining out loud and wonders if she's getting way too serious about the game. Still, Kirino decides to switch to Miyabi's route instead. While Kirino enjoys her own little world, Kyousuke just sits in his room, wondering what on earth is going on in his sisters. However, Kirino decides to let her younger sister watch a few episodes of Stardust Witch Meru. According to Kirino, Meru is her younger sister's favorite anime series, and despite her strict tastes in anime, Kirino decides to let her sister enjoy the show while she does some sewing. Later on, Kirino keeps playing the game but ends up dealing with Rinko's attitude all over again. Even though she's reached the part of the story where the main character promises to go on a date with Miyabi, she finds out that things might not go well and could lead to a bad ending. Even though she's annoyed by how the story is turning out, she decides to go back and try Rinko's route again. Somewhere else, in a fancy and elegant setting, a blue-haired girl in a white dress sips her tea while a butler stands by her side. She has just received the clothes she ordered, 3 custom-made maid outfits. She's really happy with how her maid outfit turned out, especially because her height usually makes it hard to get clothes that fit just right. It's soon shown that she's planning a party for her friends, and the maid outfits are part of the party's theme. The only thing she's not sure about is how she's going to convince them to actually wear the outfits she picked out. That afternoon, Kirino is almost done sewing a stuffed bunny for her little sister, who is sleeping quietly on her lap. While she keeps working on it, she gets a call from Kyousuke out of nowhere. He calls her because he can't bring himself to study, mostly because Kirino is making too much noise in her room. The noise Kirino is making when Kyousuke calls isn't just random shouting. She just unlocked the sweet side of Rinko in her game, which makes her really excited. Before she moves on to the big part of the game that will bring her and Rinko closer, she decides to take a shower. On her way to the bathroom, she crashes into Kyousuke in the hallway and accidentally drops her plot. However, Kyousuke turns into a freak because he already knew her plot color. She yells at him and keeps walking toward the shower without even realizing what she dropped. Kyousuke picks up the plot and tries to give them back, but Kirino slaps him hard across the face. Kyousuke soon goes back to his room and tries to keep working on his English review, but not long after, Kirino comes back too, and the noise from her talking with Rinko starts up again. For the first time in a while, Kyousuke starts to feel awkward because of how things are going with Kirino, and it doesn't take long before he gets really annoyed. He yells at Kirino through the wall between their rooms, saying that all her noise is making it hard for him to study. But Kirino doesn't take it well. She thinks he's spying on her and she storms in to call him out. The fight is about how Kirino acts weird and pervy in her games and how Kyousuke doesn't respect her space. Meanwhile, Kirino has a much easier time as she is wearing her normal gothic and looks like a baddie who is flat. Her sisters stand outside the room, peeking in with nervous looks as they watch her play the part. As Kirino gets close to the end of Rinko's route, the mood in the game starts to change and become more serious. In the story, Rinko tells the protagonist that she's sad they can't keep pretending to be lovers, since they're actually siblings. That night, Kirino writes a new blog post about everything that happened during the day. After she finishes, she checks the comments and sees that, besides Kirino's usual reply, Saori has also left a comment. Saori asks if Kirino is free next week and wants to make plans. While Kirino starts typing her response, her little sister walks into the room, holding the brand new stuffed toy Kirino made for her. Her younger sister notices a picture on the desk showing Saori and Kirino, and curiously asks if they are denizens of the world of darkness, which is what she calls people who spend a lot of time online. Meanwhile, Kirino notices that it's already too late for her to start Miyabi's route, and right then, her mom calls out and tells her to go take a bath. So, she heads to the bathroom, but when she gets there, she caught Kyousuke playing with his huge monster. Just seeing him annoy her for no real reason, and without saying a word, she kicks him in the side out of pure frustration. Kyousuke, already used to her random punishments, doesn't even get mad. He simply tells her goodnight with a calm voice. Kirino doesn't say anything back but sticks out her tongue at her older brother before heading into the bathroom. Afterward, Ayase and Kyousuke meet again at the same park where Kirino once revealed her hobby to her best friend. This time, Ayase approaches Kyousuke to ask for his help. Ayase tells Kyousuke that she has no idea what kind of present to give Kirino, and hopes that, as her older brother, Kyousuke might have some ideas. Kyousuke admits that even he isn't sure what would be a good gift for a middle schooler like Kirino. In truth, Ayase has been thinking about giving a gift related to Kirino's hobby, and although she still doesn't approve of being an otaku, she decides to set aside her own opinions for the time being. However, Kyousuke finally agrees to help Ayase, much to her relief, but it turns out that helping her may be more of a challenge for him than it is for Ayase. Meanwhile, Kirino continues to act rude toward him, as usual, especially since she knows Kyousuke has been getting closer to her friends. To make things worse, Kyousuke jokingly comments that Kirino's attitude is like that of a girlfriend. Kyousuke decides to ask Kirino's friends for help. They meet at Justine Cafe, where Kyousuke explains what's been going on with him and Kirino. He also asks about their secret regarding the animation studio, which Kirino promises is still safe, though just barely, mostly because of her mistake. Kirino admits that she accidentally let it slip that she and Saori were with Kyousuke the week before, which shocks Kyousuke. He realizes that might have been the reason for Kirino's angry reaction earlier. Later, Kyousuke meets Ayase to tell her about the gift he's thinking of, a rare, special item from Stardust Witch Maru that you can't buy anywhere. Ayase doesn't mind the idea, but she's not sure how they can get something that isn't for sale. Kyousuke then explains that the item is actually the prize for a Maru cosplay contest that's coming up soon. At first, Ayase is shocked and really angry about Kyousuke's plan, and Kyousuke quickly tries to explain what he's thinking. He tells her that she won't be dressed up as Maru because last year's winner will be way too hard to beat. Instead, he says she should go as a different character who actually looks more like her, Dark Witch Thanato's Eros, even though that costume shows more skin than Maru's. Hearing this makes Ayase even more upset. She punches Kyousuke out of anger and keeps yelling that there's no way she's wearing the Eros Thanato's outfit, not even for the prize. However, Ayase thought of someone who can do their request on Ayase's behalf, and she decides to bring her to Kyousuke a few days later. It turns out that the person Ayase is talking about is her classmate, Kanako Kirusu. Kyousuke, pretending to be Ayase's manager named Kuhei Akagi, introduces himself to Kanako. At first, Kanako acts really sweet and friendly, but once she finds out that Kyousuke isn't actually a producer, she suddenly becomes rude, which surprises and annoys him. Even so, Ayase still allows Kanako to dress up as Maru for the plan. Somewhere else, Ayase uses the van she normally takes to her photo shoots and helps Kanako get into the Maru costume while Kyousuke waits outside. After a short wait, Kanako steps out of the van looking exactly like Maru, which leaves Kyousuke stunned. A moment later, Kanako realizes she's dressed like a character straight out of an anime. But by then, it's too late. Ayase has already told the driver to start driving the van away. Afterward, Kanako finds out that Ayase has tricked her into joining the Stardust Witch Maru cosplay contest, and even though she complains and says she doesn't want to be part of it, she ends up going along with it anyway, since her regular clothes are still inside Ayase's van. Later on, they arrive at the event and are surprised to see that most of the audience is made up of grown men. Both Ayase and Kyousuke feel really awkward about how excited the older crowd is while cheering for a show that's meant for kids. What shocks them even more is seeing that Kirino is part of that group. Kyousuke decides to go tell Kirino that Kanako is taking part in the contest. After that, Ayase gives Kyousuke a hat for Kirino to wear and asks if he can meet her again at the place where they met before. Ayase leaves the event shortly after, and Kyousuke goes to talk to Kirino. As soon as he approaches her, Kirino stomps hard on his foot, causing him a lot of pain. Still, Kyousuke manages to tell her that someone from her class is going to be in the contest, and it would be smart if she stayed out of sight. Kirino listens to him and agrees to keep a low profile, so the Kousaka siblings wait quietly together. After 20 people have finished their acts, Kanako comes out, surprising everyone with how perfectly she looks like Maru and how well she sings the anime's theme song. The crowd goes wild as her performance earns a perfect 100 points, just barely beating Bridget, who had 99. The most unexpected part is that even after the awards are handed out, Kirino still doesn't realize that Kanako was the 21st contestant. Soon after the contest, Kyousuke asks Kanako how she felt while performing on stage, wondering if it was all just an act and if she was only pretending to enjoy it while fooling the fans. Kanako admits that even though she still doesn't like it, she liked being called cute and being treated like a star by the crowd. Even with that, she says she still holds on to her dislike for it all. Later, Kyousuke brings the prize Kanako won to Ayase, who quickly rushes off to give it to Kirino instead. Later at home, Kyousuke spends the day playing another one of Kirino's games on her laptop. But then he gets a surprise visit from his mom, who shocks him by saying she already knows what he's been doing on Kirino's laptop. It turns out Kirino had been complaining, and her rants reach their mom. Eventually, the day comes when Kyousuke brings his childhood friend Manami over to his house for the first time. But things don't go smoothly, because as soon as Kirino sees Manami, she quickly leaves and locks herself in her room, clearly not happy about her being there. Even though Kyousuke feels a bit nervous about what might happen next, he goes ahead and prepares some juice and snacks for Manami. While he's doing that, Kirino comes into the living room and ends up sitting with Manami. Kyousuke's worry turns out to be right when Kirino starts confronting Manami, but Manami stays calm and politely greets her anyway. Seeing this, Kyousuke quickly steps in to stop things from getting worse, but instead of continuing with Manami, Kirino turns her attention to him and pulls him out of the living room. Later, around lunchtime, Kyousuke checks on Kirino to see how she's doing. He finds out that she has cooled off since earlier, and surprisingly, she agrees to come downstairs and join him and Manami for lunch, though she's a lot quieter and less likely than she was before. Even though Manami is still a bit worried about Kirino, Kyousuke reassures her by saying that Kirino actually complimented the lunch she made. That helps calm Manami down. After that, Kyousuke decides to show Manami his room as a way of returning the favor, since she let him see her room a few weeks earlier. But right as he's heading there, Kyousuke suddenly remembers that Kirino's laptop is still in his room, and worse, one of her games is still open on the screen. It doesn't take long for Kyousuke to figure out that Kirino must have set him up, and that her better mood earlier was all part of her plan to mess with him. Panicking, Kyousuke starts trying to close the game before Manami sees it. Without looking at the screen, he fumbles around for the ESC key and, after a few seconds, finally manages to shut the program just in time. Later on, Kyousuke makes another trip to Akihabara, this time to attend a party hosted by Saori. Right away, things get strange for him when he spots a sign outside the party location that reads Kyousuke's personal harem. The moment he sees it, the lobby assistant gives him a suspicious look, making the situation even more awkward. When Kyousuke opens the door, he's greeted by both Saori and Kirino, who are both dressed in maid outfits. However, Kirino quickly finds bowing to Kyousuke a bit too gross, so Saori turns to him and asks for his opinion on how she looks. It's then that Kyousuke realizes Kirino must have shared some of his personal fetishes with Saori, which makes him feel incredibly embarrassed. As they move on, Kyousuke starts wondering where Kirino is, since she was supposed to join them. Saori then reveals that Kirino has been hiding behind the curtains, too shy to face Kyousuke in her outfit. Despite that, Kirino has made a pair of ears and a tail herself for the occasion, and she's wearing them, though she's still feeling nervous. Kirino, watching her, is torn between being annoyed and admiring how Kirino looks in the outfit. However, Saori then explains that the plan is for her, Kirino, and Kirino to each do something special to entertain Kyousuke. Since Saori has finished her part with the welcome, it's Kirino's turn. She reveals that she's made a manga and decides to present it to everyone. The manga is titled Curse of Belphegor, and to Kyousuke's surprise, many of the characters look like people he knows, including himself, Manami, and Kirino. Kirino, of course, isn't happy about seeing herself in the story and protests, but Kirino reassures her that she only used their appearances and their roles as siblings in the manga. However, when the next scene shows Kirino sniffing Kyousuke's boxers, both of the Kousaka siblings protest loudly, clearly uncomfortable with what's happening in the story. However, Kirino soon speaks too much about Kyousuke's depression and Kyousuke finally stands up to Kirino's attacks. Kyousuke points out that he is there to celebrate and to forget his problems, especially the one that Kirino created when Manami visited the Kousaka residence. But he can't help but feel mad at what he is experiencing right now. Even the serious Kirino has shown a bit of concern, and Saori tries to explain what they were planning, but Kirino decides that she should contribute to the party. Despite feeling embarrassed, Kirino gathers enough courage to hand Kyousuke a present as a peace offering for everything that happened during Manami's visit. She explains that it's a thank you for all his support, though she quickly slips back into her usual attitude after saying it. Saori then takes a moment to explain that they organized the party to cheer up Kyousuke. Even though they weren't directly involved in his depression, both Saori and Kirino apologize to him for any role they may have played. Finally, Kirino thanks Kyousuke for helping her convince their father to let her keep her hobby, for restoring her friendship with Ayase, and for giving her the opportunity to meet Saori and Kirino. Kirino and Saori both applaud Kirino for showing her first sincere side in a long time. The three of them soon notice that Kyousuke is crying. Although he initially struggles to admit it, it's clear that he's deeply moved by Kirino's heartfelt gratitude. Even though Kyousuke still feels like he doesn't deserve any thanks for helping Kirino, he can't hold back the tears as he listens to her sincerity. However, Kyousuke finally thanks Kirino for the gift and asks if he can open it. Kirino gives him permission to do whatever he wants. As he slowly unwraps the present, everyone is in for a surprise. When the gift is revealed, Kirino and Saori slump back onto the sofa, clearly overwhelmed. Kirino then persuades Kyousuke to play yet another game with her. Surprisingly, Kyousuke seems okay with it, and despite everything, thanks Kirino once again. The next morning, Kyousuke wakes up to find Kirino dressed in her school uniform, and she's acting kinder than usual. He notices it even more when she passes him a bowl of rice with a gentle gesture. Afterward, everyone gathers around the breakfast table and the conversation quickly turns to Kirino's father, Daisuke. They all embarrass him by revealing how he secretly tries to get pictures of Kirino from a distance like a total freak. Later that day, Ayase tells Kirino that their president likes Kanako. She also says that Kanako is getting closer to her dream of becoming an idol. Kanako admits that joining the cosplay competition has helped her future, and she starts to think about how she might become more famous than Kirino with her new job. Kirino, however, thanks Kanako sincerely for her words. This leaves both Ayase and Kanako confused by her unexpected gesture. Meanwhile, Kyousuke is still thinking about his younger sister's behavior, unsure that Kirino is really able to talk to him so politely. Manami believes that maybe Kirino has finally become honest about her feelings, but Kyousuke remains skeptical. Soon after, Kyousuke spots Ayase, and after noticing the slight look of disgust on her face at his presence, he greets her. Kyousuke introduces Manami to Ayase and then directly asks her about Kirino's sudden change in attitude. Manami and Kyousuke say their goodbyes and Kyousuke heads off to sit with Ayase somewhere else. There, he asks Ayase how Kirino has been acting at school. Ayase doesn't think there's anything unusual about Kirino's behavior, and assures him that she will let him know if something strange happens. Back home, Kyousuke decides to contact Saori. But like Ayase, Saori doesn't notice anything odd about Kirino, especially when it comes to her anime interests. Soon after, Kyousuke finds Kirino standing on his doorstep in his room and invites her into her own room. Kirino's expression looks sad, and she's unusually quiet compared to how she usually interacts with Kyousuke. One thing that stands out to Kyousuke, though, is the clear drop in decorations in Kirino's room. Afterward, Kyousuke finally agrees to help her with this last life counseling session. After getting Akagi's help with an alibi, Kyousuke heads to Akihabara, arriving 35 minutes before midnight. To his surprise, he finds that several people have already formed a long line for the midnight releases of various titles. Kyousuke confronts Akagi about the alibi he provided, which now feels wasted since he's not actually staying at Akagi's place. Akagi, in turn, teases Kyousuke, asking him if he's staying somewhere nice with Manami. It turns out that both Kyousuke and Akagi are after the same thing. However, Kyousuke gets the shock of his life when he sees that Akagi is planning to buy a game specifically targeted at females. However, Akagi quickly tries to explain himself, revealing that he's also there because of a request from his younger sister. Kyousuke then realizes that he and Akagi are in the same situation, But there's one key difference. Akaga's sister is a fujoshi who fantasizes about men in love with each other. Meanwhile, Kirino gets a call not from Kyousuke, but from Kirino. It turns out that Kirino has been trying to make a pair of cat ears for Kirino but doesn't have the right measurements. Kirino ends up telling her where Kyousuke is, which leads to some harsh comments from Kirino in response. Meanwhile, Kyousuke continues to make his way home, attracting some curious glances from people as he barely makes it through the journey. Thankfully, he finally reaches the Kousaka residence, where Kirino helps him sneak inside without being caught. After being led by Kirino into her room, Kyousuke hands over the merchandise and takes a quick shower before heading back to his room. Soon after, Kirino invites him to come over and play the newly purchased game with her. Afterward, Kyousuke lazily watches as Kirino breezes through one of the routes, which ends up having a sad conclusion. He's somewhat hopeful about the ending, but Kirino points out that things are different when two people are apart from each other, something that technology can't easily fix. Kyousuke quickly retracts his comment and instead calls the ending lovely, which seems to help calm Kirino down. As Kirino plays, she begins reminiscing about the time, roughly 9 months ago, when she was too embarrassed to let anyone see her collection of anime merchandise and games. Now, she decides it's time for Kyousuke to see something else. Kyousuke immediately feels nervous as the atmosphere shifts, especially when Kirino reaches behind the stacks of merchandise to grab a box from her secret stash. Soon, Kirino concludes the final life consultation and Kyousuke is somewhat surprised that the session ends up feeling weird. But Kirino is clearly relieved to have had the chance to share those things with him. Afterward, they both say goodnight to each other, and Kyousuke doesn't realize that it would be the last time they say it. The next day, Kirino suddenly disappears. It's only through his parents that Kyousuke learns what happened to her. His father explains that Kirino left for America after being recruited by a famous track coach who saw her perform at a training camp. Her training will continue there until high school. Kyousuke is visibly shocked by the news, and his father admits that he doesn't want to be so far away from his daughter. Despite the fact that Kirino won't have financial support from them, she remains unshaken. Instead, she shows her bank book, revealing that she plans to use the money she's saved from her work as a model and author. At first, Kyousuke feels relieved that the annoying Kirino is now far away, but for some reason, her absence feels different to him. He finds himself thinking that all he can do now is tell Kirino, from where he is, to give her best. The new term soon begins. Kyousuke and Manami start their school day. They spot a surprisingly familiar girl walking past them, wearing the same uniform as Manami. Kyousuke, taken aback, quickly runs after her, and when he catches up, he realizes that it's someone he knows. How long do you think it'll take for Kyousuke to escape his sister's madness? Comment little sister and let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more content.